Today we welcome back David Meerman Scott to talk about the ninth edition of his book, The New Rules of Marketing and PR, How to Use Content Marketing, AI, Social Media, Podcasting, Video, and Newsjacking to Reach Buyers Directly, published by Wiley. David Meerman Scott is an internationally acclaimed keynote speaker, business growth strategist, and author whose books and blog are must-reads for professionals seeking to generate attention in ways that grow their businesses. He's the author or co-author of 12 books, including The New Rules of Sales and Service, How to Use Agile Selling, Real-Time Customer Engagement, Big Data, Content, and Storytelling to Grow Your Business, Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead, What Every Business Can Learn from the Most Iconic Brand in History, Real-Time Marketing and PR, Fanocracy, How to Turn Fans into Customers and Customers into Fans, and Marketing the Moon, the Selling of the Apollo Lunar Program. The New Rules of Marketing and PR has been translated into 29 languages from Albanian to Vietnamese and is used as a text in hundreds of universities and business schools worldwide. And interesting fact, David Meerman Scott was the very first guest on the Marketing Book podcast in January 2015 and is now the final guest. David, congratulations on the ninth edition of the New Rules of Marketing and PR, and welcome back to the Marketing Book podcast.
Welcome back, friend. I knew this day would come.
Nice. How are you, Douglas?
Good. Well, a little sad, kind of bittersweet.
I know, right? I like set my clock by the Marketing Book podcast episodes that I've been on with you. We started off in 2015. I think, am I up to what, 7 or 8? How many have I been on?
9 book interviews.
9. Am I the winner?
Well, there was one other author who I interviewed 10 times, your friend Mark Schaefer, 10 books. But then I also interviewed you for Authors in Quarantine Getting Cocktails during the lockdown.
I did. I was drinking red wine at that time.
Yes, as was I. And I also interviewed you and Seth Godin for the Carbon Almanac.
That's right. So perhaps I'm the winner.
Well, you're a winner anyway, but you are also, and I've always said, you are the patron saint of the Marketing Book podcast.
That makes me feel warm and fuzzy. I must
Good.
tell you.
Well, you were the first guest, and now you are the last. David Meerman Scott, you are the alpha and omega of the Marketing Book podcast.
Thank you so much, Douglas.
And I have to mention that the very first time when I interviewed you, it was about the new rules of sales and service, and I was so excited. And we did the interview, and we stopped recording afterwards, and you said, "Hey, that was a really good interview, Douglas. How many of these have you done?" And I almost didn't want to answer the question. And I said, "That was my first one, David." And you said, "Oh, that's great. That's great. That was a great interview." And I think, this is better than some other podcast interviews I've been on. And from that point on, I thought, you know what? I think this may be okay.
Oh, you're great. You're a great interviewer, and so many people aren't. I can tell because they're just simply reading questions that they wrote ahead of time.
Right.
And you don't do that. You have a conversation. Sure, you take notes to things you want to think of, but yeah, I love it. I love the conversation, Douglas. Thank you.
Well, so that was sort of like a rocket booster of confidence for me, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But I did an interview recently with Dan White, who's the author of the Smart Advertising book, and I happened to mention that the first advertising book I ever read was Ogilvy on Advertising, and that was after I got out of the Army, and I decided I wanted to go work on Madison Avenue in New York City, and that's what I did, and talk about the old rules. And
no kidding,
so that
right?
book had a really big impact. The right book at the right time can have an enormous impact. And then years later, I was doing the advertising thing, had my own advertising firm, and I saw that was all going away. And my good fortune was to be able to have stumbled upon the first or second edition of your book, and the clouds parted, and I saw where everything was going. And so your book is one of 2 that have had the biggest impact on my career.
So kind of you, and to be putting me in the same category as David Ogilvy. And I remember when we first met in person, it was at Inbound.
2012.
Was it 2012? And I remember we were in the, I'm pretty sure we're in the exhibit hall, and
the Heinz.
You came up and introduced yourself, and you're like, I'm thinking of starting a podcast, not quite there yet. I'm thinking about it. And I said, I'm in. I will happily be on your podcast, Douglas. So
Well,
I'm glad we met.
I appreciate that. And, there's two other things I want to mention about David Meerman Scott, because you're an expert on the Grateful Dead and the Apollo mission. I will be the curator of the David Meerman Scott Museum, or at least the Trivial Pursuit version of that game. And as we are recording this, we're going into a presidential election here in the U.S. And of course, everybody around the world knows about it, which they pay a lot of attention to it, which is troubling to me, but I guess that's the way it is. And it kind of sucks all the oxygen out of the room. And what's interesting to me is that I guess every 4 years, you write a series of articles about how the candidates are marketing themselves. And what's amusing to me is that I believe every time you write one of those posts, you have a disclaimer that says, look, this is not a political thing.
Yes,
all I'm doing is talking about the tactics they're using. And it's very, very interesting. And invariably, there's a person who posts a comment that says, I can't follow this. I don't like it when you talk. I don't want to know about your political views.
Yeah.
And I just think you have great patience.
Yes, and I've now done this for 5 cycles, 20 years worth.
Oh.
I've been blogging for 20 years. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I love it because I'm fortunate that I live about 20 miles from the New Hampshire border. I live in Massachusetts.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And so New Hampshire is interesting because, number one, it's the first primary state. So all the wannabe candidates are crawling all over the state of Massachusetts a couple of years before the election, and you can just go to their events, and there might be 100 people or 150 people. It's fabulous. Have a chance to ask a question, have a chance to meet them and chat with them, and then New Hampshire is also a swing state, a purple state. So once the candidates are established, they come back through New Hampshire, and of course the events are way bigger because you're talking about the 2 candidates. But I find it fascinating, and I remember the time I got the most flack was I went to a Donald Trump rally in New Hampshire, and I was writing about it from the marketing perspective. I was like, what goes on at a rally? And his rallies are famous. And I want to go. I want to check it out. And so I did. And I wrote a long blog post, thoughtful blog post on the different aspects of his rally and how he gets people all excited and many different aspects of it. And I put my disclaimer on the bottom. This is not a political blog. I am not commenting on Donald Trump's politics here. I'm simply talking about Donald Trump as a marketer. And yes, people still didn't, I don't know if they didn't read that. And everything I wrote about was marketing. It's like, I'm not saying anything about his policy. I'm not saying anything about the other candidate. It's just, hey, this is the rally, Donald Trump's rally from a marketing perspective, and why it's interesting.
Right. And I remember you wrote about Hillary Clinton, and one of your posts was about how she would take the phone from people that wanted a selfie, and she would take the picture. And
it was great.
It was very smart. And I mean, there's probably only 2 phones she had to know how to use, and it got a lot more people through, and they were good pictures because she did it probably 1,000 times.
And then it's kind of neat because I could post that photo. I have a selfie with her, post the photo, and then on the bottom say Hillary Clinton photo. That's super cool, right? But yeah, she would grab, people would say, oh, can I take a photo with you? And I've gone to, I think I've probably seen 30 candidates by now over the years, maybe 40. And most candidates sort of fumble with a phone and they screw around, and it takes 30 seconds to fire off a selfie. But Hillary Clinton is so efficient. She grabs your phone from you, turns around to do the selfie, bang, takes the picture, hands it back. 10 seconds or less for everybody. So it's like, you're not going to get 30 seconds with me. I'll give you 10 seconds for your photo, and I'm moving on.
Yeah, it was like watching a Formula One pit crew.
It was fabulous, absolutely fabulous. And I wrote about that, and people was like, "Oh, no, I don't like Hillary Clinton." It's like, I'm not